It's a four-letter F word that promotes health, and yet we are often overlooking its importance in clinical care. Of course, I am talking about the word flow, Flow, and the importance of being creative and comprehensive in our interactions with our patients and clients about looking where natural flow in the body is being blocked. And today, I want to give you 7 powerful examples of how overlooked blockage or resistance to natural flow in our physiology and our biochemistry and our overall life system can promote disease, and how essential it is that we work with each unique patient or client to restore the natural flow that promotes health and vitality. Welcome to Functional Medicine for Real World Impact, where we're diving into the complex, interconnected nature of health and disease, exploring not just theory, but practically what it takes to turn functional medicine insight into powerful, practical, real-world results. So please hit subscribe and let's get started. The first of the 7 that I want to hone in on is all about oxygen. My goodness, we take oxygenation for granted, the fact that we are breathing and we're bringing oxygen into the body. And yet there are many people in your practice who have suboptimal breathing habits. And of course, much of this is influenced in today's society with poor posture. We tend to slump, we have text neck. We don't tend to put our shoulders back and really support good optimal breathing that readily fills our diaphragm and helps to promote oxygenation in the body. Many of your patients and clients who have obstructive sleep apnea or perhaps have highly debilitating snoring may simply not be aware of it, especially if they have the blessing of sleeping deeply. It often takes a good, candid conversation with their sleep partner in order to identify what might actually be at play. But it's important when you see some of the cues and clues of hidden sleep apnea, early morning fatigue, or perhaps challenges with get up and go in the morning. Maybe you see patients who have low cortisol levels or a hypoadrenal state as an indication of a extended stress state. We want to be thinking about the possibility of hidden sleep apnea and being able to help these individuals get relief. Similarly, we can struggle to have good, strong airways and optimal oxygenation if we are mouth breathers. And often individuals have quite a bit of nasal respiratory congestion and histamine mediated congestion and mucus buildup, and we may not be aware that we relax into being mouth breathers. And indeed, this prevents the natural hormetic strengthening of our airways that later on in life can actually predispose an individual for sleep apnea. So we want to pay attention to posture, even if you're working with a patient virtually, making sure you spend time with them so that you can watch how they inhale and how they exhale in order to ensure optimal input of oxygen and exhalation of carbon dioxide. Then, of course, there is the notion that oxygen needs to be circulated in the body. And number 2, most common overlooked blockage has to do specifically with subclinical anemia. It might be macrocytic, it might be microcytic. Most often, macrocytic anemia is overlooked. This is where mean corpuscular volume begins to rise into the upper half of the normal reference range, and red blood cells are becoming large enough that they don't circulate optimally within the smallest capillaries in the body. And this can definitely deprive key tissues of optimal oxygen levels and may lead to numbness and tingling over time, but also overt tissue dysfunction. And numbness and tingling we often treat as an annoyance, but it can over time, when chronic, become quite debilitating to the tissue in question. And so we want to think about our blood and sufficiency of oxygenation. Another key component of optimal circulation in the body is water, hydration. This is number 3 on often overlooked blockage of flow in the human body. And again, water and electrolyte minerals so that we can optimally hydrate our cells tends to be so everyday and ho-hum that we often don't question it. Or we assume that if a patient is consuming a certain number of glasses of water, that they're going to have optimal cellular hydration. And that is not necessarily true at all, especially in today's culture, at least here in the US, where we tend to drink lots of anything except perhaps plain, clean water. And especially abnormally high intake of caffeine or alcohol, or maybe high tannin containing beverages can overtly contribute to dehydration. And so we need to do an exploration, not just in habits like water intake, but also looking at cues and clues in everyday annual physical lab work to help us to pinpoint subclinical dehydration. And you can do this through some targeted markers, but even more simply, looking at questionable elevation in, for example, hematocrit percentages, the amount of albumin, and or the amount of red blood cells in circulation. And when these are surprisingly elevated, we want to question whether dehydration is promoting that elevation simply because of lower blood volume, which is going to contribute to higher levels of concentration related markers in blood labs. Again, flow is critical for health and vitality. And when we have resistance to that, blockage, or the impairment of smooth, continuous flow and rhythms in our lives, we can really end up suffering and having a much greater predisposition for disease. Now, it's not just blood that circulates in the body. We also need to talk about lymph. Lymph is one of the most overlooked components of human anatomy and certainly key physiological functioning. And the best analogy, I think, is to think about lymph as being your body's sewer system. And just like in most of our communities and cultures where we live, we don't tend to think very much about the health and vitality of our sewer system. But boy, do we count on it working. And when it becomes dysfunctional, life can become highly debilitating and quickly. But many individuals in your practice struggle from poor lymphatic circulation, not only because of dehydration, because of course lymph is a liquid that needs to circulate, but especially because of sedentary lifestyles. Lymph needs our voluntary muscle movement in order to stimulate the progression of lymph in the body. And yes, there are some involuntary habits such as breathing that helps to naturally stimulate the movement of lymph through vessels. But when we have highly sedentary lifestyles, and again, poor posture along with being sedentary, we tend to have impaired lymph movement. And this in particular impairs the immune system's ability to clear debris from its defense and repair activities in the body. And this can leave waste products, toxins, even pro-inflammatory endotoxin from microbes, such as lipopolysaccharides or debris, fragments of lipopolysaccharide. We can end up with some of these in circulation and lymph for longer periods of time, and this can actually promote a secondary pro-inflammatory response. We want to be well hydrated. We want to move and to stimulate this natural circulation and excretion of sewage in our bodies. Similarly, hydration is essential, of course, for kidneys. And when individuals might have frequent occurrence of urinary tract infections or bladder infections, or may have irritable bladder dynamics, or be vulnerable to frequent kidney stones, we often look for upstream biochemical imbalances that are promoting these diagnoses, these dysfunctions. But we often don't think about the critical role of ho-hum, oh so boring hydration. But no amount of targeted interventions in the realm of kidney health in particular are going to be durable unless we help people to adopt and sustain hydration habits that work for their unique lifestyle. So we've covered 4 of the critical blockages. I've got 3 more that I want to cover with you. And the next one is about the flow of our circadian rhythms. We are creatures that are designed to thrive with day night cycles. And so much of human physiology is designed to respond to this natural rhythm. And especially as it relates to wakefulness and sleep, research makes quite clear that overnight work or shift work that can force individuals to try and to be alert and focused and productive overnight and then try to sleep during daytime hours, these individuals are much more prone to chronic disease. And large scale research shows over time it does promote shorter lifetimes simply because of the misalignment with the natural rhythm. Now, certainly some individuals have the phenotype of responding more to the morning lark type of early riser schedule. Other individuals sleep a little bit later and they have a little bit more of that night owl dynamic and they go to bed later. Oh, there is certainly diversity of preferences and rhythms amongst a circadian clock, but we want to emphasize the importance of staying in touch with the natural light and dark cycles in our lives. And often we work indoors and we don't prioritize getting outside in truly full spectrum daylight as a way of helping our body to tune to and align with circadian rhythm. And this over time can promote dysregulation in the HPA-TG axis, especially as it relates to optimal cortisol levels, that oh so powerful stress hormone. But then also nighttime and the importance of allowing darkness in the evening. In these modern times, our homes are flooded with all sorts of different lights, including full spectrum lighting and lots of screens that are exposing us to full spectrum, including blue light later in the evening. And whether it's our cell phone or our laptop or a tablet or the television, we are often looking at screens and being exposed to this full spectrum light well into the evening. And this naturally impairs sleep. In particular, the secretion of melatonin, which dances with cortisol in order to help us to thrive in in our day-night rhythms. Melatonin needs dim light in order to be secreted. And so when we're not focused on dimming the light and getting away from full spectrum light of screens and also very stimulatory content and rapid screen refresh rates in the evening, this can not only potentially contribute to trouble falling asleep, but it may actually impair people's ability to stay asleep later on. And melatonin is particularly important for sleep timing. Sleep onset and the extended nature of sleep overnight, along with some other hormones as well. So it's important that we think about, even in our modern routines, exposing ourselves every day to day and night. But again, these concepts are so basic or foundational. We often believe that there can't possibly be any significant science in these concepts. We assume that the body somehow is capable of overriding these natural rhythms, this natural need for flow. And nothing could be further from the truth. These are essential topics for you to cover in your clinical care. Other critical aspects of flow, especially for women, has to do with hormones. And this is number 5 that I want to hone in on here. Because women during their fertile years have menstrual cycles, and hormones are naturally ebbing and flowing across a lunar month in order to promote an environment for fertility. And the closure of that fertile window and the sloughing off of reproductive biochemicals, and then the beginning again of another fertile month. But in this day and age, we have adopted many habits that unfortunately can interfere with this natural cycling. And many women use hormonal contraceptives. And in particular, if this involves artificial non-innate human hormones, we can be missing out on some of the natural progression and the flow of hormone rhythm that promotes health. One of those, for example, is using a birth control pill that not only includes oral estrogens, but also oral progestins. And many of you are quite progressive, and you likely already know that progestins and progesterone are not at all the same biochemical. The words are often used interchangeably in published research, and so we have a lot of myths otherwise. But progestins have, in many cases, depending on the particular pharmaceutical, very different properties than natural human progesterone. In particular, many progestins have strong androgenic properties. Progesterone helps in particular to promote levels of GABA, the body's primary inhibitory neurotransmitter. And the alpha metabolites of progesterone. It's a great reminder, by the way, that hormone metabolites still have hormonal properties that can be quite different from the parent hormone. But alpha metabolites of progesterone overtly stimulate greater synthesis and also greater receptor activation of GABA. This is quite helpful for promoting calming, and in particular, helping to balance the very glutamate stimulating lifestyles that many of us tend to lead, especially driven by all of that screen time and rapid refresh rate that is constantly provoking high dopamine neurotransmission and creating a very stimulatory neurological environment. But we need GABA. We need ample supply and neurotransmission of GABA as the body's primary inhibitory neurotransmitter. In particular, this is key for rest and sleep. We have to be able to calm neurotransmission in the brain enough to allow melatonin to actually work so that we can sleep. And this is where having natural progesterone can really help to promote optimal neurological functioning and mood balance, in particular for women. And we might be using pharmaceutical contraceptives that interfere with that natural rhythm. Women can also struggle from anovulatory cycles, whether it is because of inadequate eating, where we have hypothalamic amenorrhea and a lack of ovulation. This may be because of acute stress or inadequate caloric consumptions, which is unfortunately still quite common in our societal obsession with thinness and weight loss. But women need to ovulate in order to make progesterone. In order to have these downstream effects. Progesterone, steady cyclical waves of progesterone also plays a key role for histamine tolerance in the body. Estrogen and progesterone both play roles in histamine balance, both synthesis and degradation. And in general, estrogen tends to promote higher levels of histamine, and progesterone upregulates the activity of enzymes like diamine oxidase that helps to degrade histamine. And so when we're blocking this natural hormonal flow, we can be impairing some of the downstream functional balances that hormones naturally regulate as they are allowed to flow through their rhythms. Now, I also want to talk about the possibility of blockage in the physical body. Now, this can be anything from constipation, literally blockage in the GI tract that is preventing phase 3 excretion of toxins and waste products that can promote their reabsorption, what I like to call detoxification, and bringing them back into circulation into the body after they have been packaged or conjugated in the liver in order to allow excretion. But in some cases, we have impaired detoxification and clearance or flow of waste products and debris in the body because of clothing. How often do we speak to women, for example, about their undergarments and whether or not they are wearing underwear or girdles or the oh so popular today Spanx, or maybe tight bras or upper body undergarments that can be having marked impingement on circulation of blood, or more importantly, circulation of lymph. And especially with regard to the breast and the high concentration of lymph nodes up and around the armpits, for example, this can have a significant impairment physically through the tight clothing, the impingement of these vessels in terms of the natural flow of excretion. Similarly, what about tight belts? Tight pants, right? Skinny jeans. If individuals are struggling with IBS, it might surprise you to learn just how many people learn that by simply loosening up their clothing, getting rid of the super tight belt or the tight pants, especially the ones that are highly squishing the lower abdomen, and individuals are ending up with a muffin top, especially women, that's spilling over the waistband of their pants. This indeed can be impinging natural movement of chyme and stool through the GI tract, and certainly can exacerbate dysmotility in the intestines. We need our clothing to be loose enough in all areas to promote natural movement of oxygen, of water, of nutrients, but also of waste products, whether it is the metabolites of endogenous substances like hormones, or the rich diversity of toxins that we're exposed to in the air, in the water, in our food, in our personal hygiene and beauty products, the things we slather on our skin. The body has strong capacity for biotransforming these chemicals to more soluble forms, more polar forms that can be water soluble and readily excreted in the body. But this assumes that our vessels, our cavities, the transport highways with which we queue up these materials for excretion, primarily via the stool or via the urine, that they are free flowing. And clothing can actually be a marked blockage of that natural flow that otherwise promotes health and vitality. But the last, and perhaps for some of your patients, the most important flow in the body that we can be resisting is that of joy. And we call it vitamin J at SAFM. We talk quite a bit about the essential nature of some of these other vitamins, whether it's vitamin J for joy, or vitamin S for stillness, or sex, or sleep. Or what about vitamin L for laughter, or vitamin P for play, or the other vitamin A for adventure? This may seem like a silly concept to you, but when we realize how often a major mediator of disease in adults is a constant state of nervous system hypervigilance and pessimism or negativity or worry or ruminating, and how much our physiology changes when we are living more predominantly in that sympathetic dominant nervous system mode, we start to understand the very real scientific importance of cultivating a lifestyle that enables us to be sufficient in and richly fortified with these other alternative nutrients, right? And that we are making time in our lives for what brings us joy. In some cases, individuals might be struggling with inadequate vitamin F for forgiveness. You and I could be exposed to the exact same circumstances and the exact same challenges in life. But if you are finding a way to forgive and accept and move on, forward looking and taking responsibility for your equanimity and for creating an optimistic parasympathetic daily response, your body is going to be capable of physiology that mine may not be. If I am stuck in resentment and anger, and I am viciously in resistance to forgiving, or I believe forgiveness is impossible because I hurt too much and I keep revisiting my pain and how I have been disappointed or violated or not treated fairly in some way. This can make a dramatic difference when I am in a sympathetic dominant nervous system mode. My physiology and biochemistry works differently. Nervous system hypervigilance and worry and ruminating and fear and anger, these tend to promote things such as the ability to fight, flight, hide, and potentially freeze. It promotes higher blood sugar, higher heart rate, higher blood pressure, and a deprioritization of key physiological dynamics such as GI motility and nutrient absorption, such as biotransformation and excretion of toxins, such as fertility and pregnancy. These are things that we need a good, strong parasympathetic nervous system norm in our lives in order to support those physiological processes. But it's a very real truth that many of the people in your practices may be seeking your help with a lot of symptoms and suffering that are natural outgrowths of a sympathetic dominant nervous system mode. There's nothing wrong with the body. It's not broken. In fact, it's not even dysregulated. It's doing exactly what it was designed to do to promote survival via a sympathetic nervous system activation and coordination so that you can fight, flight, hide, and if necessary, freeze and make it till tomorrow so you can survive. The body will allow us to thrive and to have high vitality lifestyles, but only if the body's physiology is assured that our safety is certain. And if we are constantly ruminating and worrying and being anxious and angry and fearful and bearing up against something in life, then our nervous system is quite wise at taking cues and clues from our thoughts. And that body is not going to prioritize a parasympathetic response. It's not going to prioritize deeply resting, thoroughly digesting, healing from infections and wounds thoroughly, and promoting fertility, pregnancy, and birth. And so this is a critical underlying truth that, again, may seem so obvious, so basic, but this is why topics such as mindset and outlook and mindfulness practices and the health of one's relationships and whether or not one has a good, positive, supportive relationships with family and friends and neighbors and colleagues and community, whatever is important to them, that this is actually an essential part of health, that people are around other individuals. We've been talking a lot over the past few years about how research is showing that loneliness is like the new smoking. We need to have ample social interaction and engagement, not too much, not too little, depending on who we are. But I've covered today for you 7 critical aspects of flow in the body that if we are in resistance to it, whether knowingly or unknowingly, we can end up promoting disease. The body is naturally designed to promote health and vitality. The other 4-letter F word that is essential for health is flow. And you can do your very best clinical work when you help individuals to identify where they may be in resistance to that flow. And by partnering with you, they can help to remove that blockage and experience renewed vitality. Thanks for joining me. Have a great day.